OnX Hunt provides detailed, color-coded maps with public and private land ownership information. OnX turns your phone into a fully functional GPS, even when cell phone service is not available, and gain the confidence to hunt new areas and states. Game wardens are using OnX to make sure you are hunting in the right spot. Shouldn't you be using OnX first? Start your free 7-day trial by visiting Google Play and the App Store. This is Game Warden Wayne Saunders, and I use OnX.
Wish you could fish more, anywhere, anytime. RODgeeks, a St. Croix rods partner, has developed a 42-inch one-piece travel rod designed and built with the same technology found in St. Croix rods. This travel rod is offered as a kit that comes with the RG42 rod, spinning reel, fishing line, pliers, and tackle tray. All in a case with space for your wallet, phone, and fishing license. Just grab and go. Perfect to keep in your pickup, car, or RV. This shorty performs much like a longer rod, but is compact enough for easy storage and for on-the-go use. Make this the summer you fish more. RODgeeks.com.
Guidefitter.com. Guidefitter, bridging you to the outdoors while providing a quality platform for guides and outfitters for you to select from. Guidefitter is the best place to get discounts on gear if you're an outdoor professional. As a game warden, I'm a member of the Outdoor Government Program, which has over 80 quality brands to get discounts from. It's free to join. Yes, free to join. And all you need to do is prove that you're an active outdoor government employee. There are all kinds of products available. Apparel, boots, archery equipment, optics, backpacks, cameras, watches, ammo, anything, you name it. And while you're there, check out the articles, information, and stories that you'll be inspired from. So before you head out to work in the outdoors or start your next outdoor adventure, check out Guidefitter.com and get discounts on your everyday or every so often outdoor equipment. This is Game Warden Wayne Saunders for Guidefitter.
Wireless partners building the FirstNet cellular network for AT&T in New Hampshire, Maine, and Vermont to ensure first responders can always communicate in emergency situations, so you know help is on the way when you need it. Wireless Partners is partnering for success with communities, local and state government, local business, and visitors. Wireless Partners building cellular networks for you. This podcast is brought to you by Maine Operation Game Thief.
Please join me, Game Warden Wayne Saunders, and other game wardens on our adventures, protecting wildlife, saving lives, and having fun, all while serving the public and the natural resources of our planet. Listen to the tales and experiences of those who work in the outdoors while being entertained with stories about encounters with poachers, wildlife investigation, murder investigation, near-death experiences, search and rescue missions, wildlife interactions from game wardens around the country and around the world. When I retired, I realized I couldn't let go of that legacy, but rather wanted to share the passion, the commitment, and the stories of those men and women that call themselves game wardens. This is Game Warden Wayne Saunders, and this is Warden's Watch. Episode 18, Pennsylvania Game Warden Mark Rutkowski, and I probably butchered his last name as I did in my podcast. Mark is a really unique individual that I've known a very long time and have had the pleasure of getting to know him. And like so many other wardens, we are very similar people in different places. Pennsylvania is known to have probably the most hunters in the United States of America. They flip-flop with Ohio. That central area is just filled with sportsmen and consequently has a lot of game and has a lot of poaching. So you're going to get to hear some of Mark's stories, which I found extremely interesting. But I hope you listened to episode 17, John Norris, and I hope you like that one as well. The Weed Warrior, I'll call him. You're going to be hearing more from John in the future. John and I are going to collaborate. Me on the East Coast, him on the West Coast. I think we'll do a great job working together. So next year, look forward to listening to John working with me, and I'm looking forward to it as well. So that's a little taste of what's in the future for Warden's Watch. But for now, we're in Pennsylvania. And Pennsylvania, what a great state. When hunting season starts in Pennsylvania, schools closed. Can you imagine that? Schools closed. And it just became a family event. Hunting, opening day of deer season became a family event. Whether it was grandpa, grandson, sons, daughters, wives, it still makes a mark on the opening day of hunting season. And that's just an awesome thing. But this year, you're going to hear Mark talk about changing of the days. They're not going to have to close school this year. They're going to open on a Saturday to try to bring some of those people that maybe travel for colleges, be able to come home for the weekends and be able to participate with their families in a long-term family event. So that's pretty neat to change things according to what social structure is becoming. And I think we're seeing that year to year, our social structure is changing, and a lot of us try to keep it the way it was, that traditionalism, and try to have people understand where our roots are, where we came from, and why we want to stay there. And all those shows on Discovery Channel do a great job of people going back in the woods and living there. I just love that. I just love that simple life that we had 100 years ago. Although I love my modern conveniences too. We wouldn't be podcasting if that was the case. But family events is pretty awesome because me and Mark actually met kind of at a family event. I'm going to call game wardens their extended families. And we have our close-knit families, the guys we work with day in and day out. And then we go beyond our borders of our states. And it's our family that is across the nation, the game wardens that we meet at these field days. And every year, somebody usually hosts a field day that game wardens come to. They get to interact with each other, tell stories. They get some training during that time. And we get to have that family reunion, so to speak. And that's where me and Mark met with 20 years ago at a Maine field day. And it was just, we had that personality that we connected and we stayed in touch through the years. And we always looked forward to seeing each other at those field days or family reunions. And I always called, and Mark would bring a contingent up from Pennsylvania. And this time, I think they brought 11 guys to the field day, which is just awesome because as much as we are similar, we are different. And to share those differences, it just draws us closer together as a unit working for you nationwide, whether you're a sportsman, a wildlife watcher, an outdoors enthusiast. It just makes us a better, all-around, rounded game warden by participating in these things. So I'm going to encourage, if you're a young warden, go to these field days, interact with guys outside your state, go to these conferences, interact with other game wardens. It rounds you and it gives you resources in other states. Some guys have expertise in other areas. I'm just going to say that that's a great thing. And it's a great thing that for the public that we serve and the resources, the wildlife, to make us better game wardens. And by those associations and those relationships, we become better game wardens. And Mark has made me a better game warden through the years. He's got some skill sets that I don't. We talk about different things. It's just a great relationship. And 23 years later, here we are podcasting. And we're trying to hold on to our traditions as game wardens, except we want to change as well because we have to change. We have to adapt. We have to address the needs of the people that we are serving and the resources that we are serving. You know, we got to remember, first and foremost, we should be serving the resources. We should be protecting wildlife. That is our primary mission, and we talk about that. That is our primary mission, but we are being pulled in so many different ways because we are the police in the woods. And that's going to happen, and that's going to change, and we are going to be more effective because of it. We are going to be more relied upon because of it. It's just a fact, and we talk about that. And Mark has made me that better rounded warden because of our relationship. And it's awesome. It's awesome if you know a warden in other states. There's differences, there's different laws, there's different rules, there's different reasons for those laws and rules. And I hope we explain it as we go around this great nation of ours and talk to these individual wardens, these individual cases, these individual issues. You can get a huge perspective on what's going on nationwide. And I hope you enjoy listening to Wardens Watch podcast to get all that information, to hear all those stories of all these game wardens who are protecting our natural resources, your natural resources, my natural resources. So without further ado, we're going to get right into the podcast with Mark. Mark is a supervisor, law enforcement supervisor.
Correct.
Which would be equal to, if we were using rank and stuff, it would be like a lieutenant.
A lieutenant. I'm one of 6 in the state.
Wow. That's surprising for Pennsylvania because that's a big state.
We have 6 regions, and we have 4 supervisors in our headquarters that have their own discipline, and they oversee a different program, and I happen to oversee the law enforcement program for 13 counties in the Northeast.
Wow. Now I'm impressed, Mark. I've known you for a long time, and I'm like, wow, that's a big job.
20 years.
Yeah.
Right? Almost 20.
Almost 20.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you have how many working as a game warden?
Almost 20. Well, actually, it'll be 20 as a salaried officer and almost 8 years as a deputy. So I've been on since 92 with the agency.
Nice. I came on 95. So, and we've known each other for a good long time.
Yeah.
Oh, but how many people do you actually supervise with? I'm thinking that sounds like a big number.
Well, we have 23 districts within our region, so that's 23 game wardens, 5 land management group supervisors. They're game wardens that have other responsibilities that oversee civilian maintenance crews. And then I supervise 40 deputy officers, which would be basically like part-time
police officers.
Police officers, yeah.
Which have to keep their standards up and meet all kinds of things.
Yeah, it's a pretty unique program. When I tell other states about it, they tilt their head and say, wow.
Well, let's start there. We're there now, so let's start with your deputy program because it is very unique. I mean, we've had deputies before. They come and they go. Technically, I'm a deputy now, and I run the Operation Game Thief program.
Right.
I wish I get paid like a lieutenant, but I get paid like a deputy.
Exactly.
But, Pennsylvania, I mean, we're talking, you said statewide, like 350 deputies?
About 325 now.
Okay, 325.
And for us, we're looking at it as critically low. When I came on in 92, we probably had somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,200 to 1,500 across the state.
Oh, my goodness. Wow.
And, it changes society, the more responsibility, liability, the dangers of the job, and basically time.
Right. No, definitely. And when you think of part-time police officers, they have to meet some certain standards, firearms, shooting, defensive tactics.
Correct. When a deputy applies, they go through a written exam and a physical fitness exam, and that pretty much tells us whether they have the aptitude to do it and the physical ability to do it. Then we send them down to our academy in Harrisburg, and they're there essentially, I believe, for 9 days for 16 hours a day. And they get the basic training. They'll get basic firearms handling, self-defense, an overview of the agency and the program. And at one time when I went through it, once we completed that, and I went for 5 days, they would give you your credentials, your badge, and they'd send you out, and you'd be on a year probation. Well, now, after the 9 days, 16 hours, they send them back with a booklet. Well, actually a big binder, and they have a certification exam, which is almost 300 question exam that they have to take before they can get their credentials. So it's pretty involved.
Yeah, I would say. And what do they get paid?
Nothing. And I shouldn't say nothing, but we have a budget for deputies, and they get a stipend. It basically works out to they get paid 24 days a year at a rate of $80 a day.
Wow. A day.
So and it was $50 when I did it.
They worked 8 hours a day. That's $10 an hour.
Yeah. And the funny part about
that's just for 24 days. They can work more.
They could work more. And, we have some deputies that work. There's a deputy that came today. We're at the field days. Came up and he said, I work 1,000 hours a year.
Yeah.
And, and he may be getting paid a little more because of his activity, but he's definitely not getting the bang for his buck.
And those are dedicated people.
Incredibly. And
people that care about our resource, care about the wildlife.
And that's why they're there, because I would say all of them are there for the resource and not the money.
Right.
The money covers some gas expenses, some equipment needs, because we outfit them with a uniform, but they're still responsible for their leather gear, their firearm, their radio in their car, any incidentals with their vehicle, gasoline.
So they use their own vehicles. Put a radio in it. Do they put blue lights in it too?
They could put a red light. They're authorized to use a red light and an audible siren.
And in Pennsylvania, red lights law enforcement?
Yes. And it varies a little differently than the salaried wardens and the deputies because of the vehicle code and what's recognized as an emergency vehicle. But basically, when you describe their responsibilities and what they do, it's pretty broad. They have a lot of authority, powers of arrest. Yeah, it's
I can't believe you still have 325 doing it.
Yeah, and we were trying to get back up to 400, but the agency does recognize the fact that we want quality over quantity. We want to make sure that we're picking the right individual to fill those positions.
Yeah, just like we do with our officers, and that's kind of a good training ground if somebody gets in that, and like
Exactly.
you did.
I did, and that's, the deputy program, I'm a product of the deputy program, and I know that a lot of my fellow officers, my supervisors, my boss, my regional director, Dan Figured, and I were in the same deputy class.
Yeah.
And, now he's the director of a region, and I'm the law enforcement supervisor, and I don't think if it was for that deputy program, either one of us would be here.
And it's almost like a test drive for employment, too.
Absolutely.
Your supervisor said, geez, Mark works out really good. We want him as a full-time officer, and there you were. How many years did you work as a deputy?
Almost 8.
Oh, my goodness.
Almost 8 from 1992.
That was quite the test drive, Mark.
It sure was. And it wasn't for a lack of trying to get in the academy, but again, back in those days, the drive to get into the academy, there's like 3,200 applicants.
Yes.
And it was challenging, and it took me 7 years, and I didn't quit. And after the third try, I got in.
Nice. And I when I talk to other states and everything, and we talk about back when we started, it was the same thing. So many people wanted to be a game warden. So many people took that test. Not like today.
No, and it's kind of discouraging, and it's like, wow, I can't believe 3,500 people took the test when I did, and now, we're hoping to get 1,000 people, and this time around, because we put more requirements on the to take the exam, it knocked it down into the hundreds, and we're like, wow, But I think that's a challenge for everybody in the country right now, is attracting, and it has a lot of other things to do. Competition with private industry, competition with other state agencies like our Pennsylvania State Police, who the benefits and the salary are much better than ours are. But we're hoping that we're attracting an individual again that's more about the resource. We're unique. I always said that. We're law enforcement. I always said the game warden was the special forces of law enforcement, because we did it all, and we're just not police officers. We're not cops. We're game wardens.
Yeah, I like that special forces. We're the special forces, because we're the police in the woods, and more so as we come along, because if it's in the woods, they want to call the game warden.
Exactly.
And you guys, we didn't even put this in, but you have a special tracking team, don't you?
We do. Our woodland tracking team that I'd say has developed probably, I can't remember exactly how long, but it was in the making within the last 7 or 8 years, and came from just an idea from an officer that knew this Scott Donnellan down in Virginia and started training Maryland, and got into orienteering and tracking. Said, boy, this would be really cool to get into, because who better to know the woods than the game warden?
Yeah. And I don't know if people realize, but we're tracking humans.
Humans, yeah.
Human tracking through the woods.
And the people that they learned off of were in the Rhodesian army, tracking at one time, I guess, communists out of Vietnam. And then once the war was over, they turned to poachers and taught the Rhodesian army troops how to do this. And then they came over and taught our people, and I watch them work, and I'm even though I'm involved with the tracking team as a supervisor, it's still amazing to see the skill set that our operators have, and watch them do it. So yeah, we're pretty proud about that team, and they've had some great outcomes and accomplishments over the last few years.
Yeah, it's kind of known nationwide about your tracking team.
Yeah, and that's because of the case with the Eric Frayne incident back a few years ago, where he shot and killed a trooper and severely wounded another, and
that was right at the troop station too, right?
Right at the barracks, in Blooming Grove in Pike County.
Yeah,
in the heart of our
fled
district.
into the woods.
Fled into the woods, and had a background in survival. And I think it was 48 days on the run with joint operations with the state police, ATF, FBI, U.S. Marshals, and our tracking team. And our tracking team gained a lot of notoriety because they were helping in several facets. You had these urban teams coming out of Philly that weren't used to operating in a woodland terrain, and they were like, hey, can we have your guy here? And split the team up, and they were leading teams in searches. So it really put him on the forefront of some of the things we did, and gained a lot of respect for our officers.
Yes, I would definitely. We're the police in the woods, and a lot of agencies are forming basically SWAT teams for the woods.
Yeah, and we don't want to we talk about it. I'm kind of from the old guard, and
as am I.
It's funny because I'm sitting here with you and thinking about 20 years ago when I first came up here to Maine and met you, and I'm thinking, holy cow, I was like a rookie officer, and now I'm a supervisor, and I'm looking back at the young guys we brought up today with us, and I'm like, holy cow, talk about the old guard and knowing the old game wardens and the new game warden, and I always look at myself as being like old school but progressive. So when I talk about things about
I'd like to think of myself like that too.
Yeah. With the technology and everything. But, we talk about mission creep, and that's a big word when we talk about getting away from the core values of what we're supposed to be doing.
Yes.
But unfortunately, we can't get away from mission creep because society...
We're good at what we do.
We're good at what we do, but society is pulling us in different directions that we're dealing with things that... In 1992, as a deputy, I would have never envisioned our officers being involved in.
Because we're the police in the woods.
Right. And that's where most crime is happening today.
And smartly, other law enforcement is reaching out to wardens because they do know the woods.
Right.
They know that's their specialty. That's when they operate, they're comfortable.
Exactly.
It's almost like having a special forces military team in operation because that's where they're comfortable. They live in the woods. They like the woods. They know what's in the woods. They know what doesn't belong in the woods.
And they're not afraid of the woods.
And they're not afraid of the woods, especially
or what's in it
at
dark.
night either.
And that was a huge advantage to our people because where that incident had happened, that's teeming with wildlife there. It's like probably the highest bear population in the state. And we had to operate.
So those bumps in the night might have been...
They were, with the
bumping bears.
Bumper bears, and they were doing these large grid searches and pushing bears out like crazy. And some of those urban officers were not used to seeing, essentially being on a bear drive and pushing all this wildlife. And it really opened their eyes to, and why we're chuckling,
Yeah, why we're comfortable with it.
We're comfortable. They're running for a cruiser.
Out of their minds because a bear just ran past them.
Yeah, so... we really showed our true ability to operate in that type of environment.
Yeah, and I think that's why we're doing that creep thing because we're talking about it more. People are seeing it on television.
Right.
Our sister agencies are seeing what we're capable of, and they're just like, yeah, we need some help. Where we're not operating well.
Yeah,
so.
and the great thing is a lot of those barriers, and I call it, the ego barriers, have been broken down, and a lot of these supervisors or upper echelon, these other agencies who have started on the ground level on the road with all of us and moved up in the ranks, saying, hey, I watch these guys operate. They know what they're doing, and now that they're in a position to make change and make decisions, they're bringing us on board, and vice versa. I don't think there's a better relationship now with our agency than our state police and our sister agencies because everybody's working together and we're using each other as a resource. So it broadens a lot of things, a lot of intelligence, sharing information. So
we're becoming more efficient as law enforcement agencies.
Absolutely.
By giving everybody specialties and working together. So as a lot of rural departments have done for eons because that's the resources they have to pull from other agencies.
Right.
So, but great. So, hey, we talked about all the bears you have in the woods, and everybody's going to have to look at the cover picture on your podcast because you are holding this massive bear trap that was just found recently. So I want to tell everybody about that because when you sent me that, I was like, wow.
Yeah, I thought you'd enjoy that picture.
Yeah, it's an awesome picture. It's got a lot of history. And then to hear the rest of the story you tell me, so I'd like you to share that with everybody else because that was a pretty cool story as it is.
Well, we, our agency's steeped in tradition with a lot of things, like all other game and wildlife agencies. Like we all have our story. Pennsylvania, the reason though we have game wardens and at that time game protectors back in the early 1900s is because of market hunting. And we had most of Pennsylvania was deforested, clear cut because of growing cities, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, New York City, and there was a demand for wildlife and wood products. So pretty much Pennsylvania was decimated in the late 1800s, and with that, the wildlife was. So whatever wildlife was there, we had market hunters, and they were just killing indiscriminately wildlife, deer, turkey, bears, in all different ways. And
if you could eat it, they killed it.
Exactly, or if you can pluck it for a feather. Or
feathers,
fur, hides, everything, whatever could feed that, that machine of, population around the country. So the market hunters were using all kinds of different methods legal methods, whether it was a punt gun to kill waterfowl or a nail bucket, a wooden bucket with nails in it, with a chain with honey in it to attract bears and trap them and kill them, deadfalls, all kinds of stuff. So, they were using bear traps. So to get on what we were talking about, this bear trap.
And big bear traps,
bear trap, about 35-pound bear trap, double spring, and we have a Game Lands 127 in Monroe County, which is in the Pocono area, and everybody's familiar with the Poconos, of the honeymoon vacation area of Pennsylvania.
There's a racetrack there, too.
Racetrack, Long Pond, tricky triangle. So we have a large Game Lands out there, about 27,000 acres, and it used to be an old artillery range.
Wow.
And during World War I and World War II, they would bring troops in there for artillery practice from the Tobyhanna Army Depot. They would launch 155 howitzers into this large tract of land. And that went on, I think, almost into the Korean War in the 50s.
Wow.
And then somehow we acquired the property. I think it was for $1 sale or something, from what I understand, and it became Game Lands. But the only problem was it was loaded with all this unexploded ordnance, like millions and millions of pounds. So I could remember back when I was a new conservation officer in Monroe County, they had a firm come in from Department of Defense, would go in and mine sweep. They would come with these big headsets and big metal detectors and look for unexploded ordnance. And they'd be picking up 155 howitzer unexploded shells, 88 millimeter, whatever the Army can launch in there. It was in there. And we couldn't do anything with the property. We couldn't do any control burning. We couldn't manipulate the land for food plots.
Was the property closed, posted?
It was open to hunting. It was. And it was kind of unique because we'd have people bring back like 155 millimeter howitzer cells between their lap and their pickup and like, hey, look what we found. Or like everybody's running away from the car and the guy thinks he's got this great souvenir and he doesn't know that like it's going to leave a 4-foot crater in the ground.
Yeah, and not much of him left either.
No. So and thankfully we've never had any of those incidents where we've had a detonation with somebody having it. Jeez. So this company came in and was clearing the ordinance. Well, it's 20 years later and they're kind of wrapping it up, and it's pretty amazing it took that long and there's that many ordinance. So they were sweeping a portion of Game Lands out near the Tobyhanna State Park, not far Interstate 380 in Tobyhanna, and they came across a large object under the ground about 3 feet in a swamp, thinking it was an unexploded ordnance. They dug it up. Well, lo and behold, it turns out to be this vintage bear trap with teeth. Everything intact, pristine. No, I wouldn't say pristine, but it's in darn good shape for being under the ground.
For 200 years.
Yeah, whatever, how long it was.
Right.
And
because it was made then, it wasn't necessarily
correct.
lost then.
And we had it looked at by folks that were, are privy to that time of the century, and I marked like 1840. And
wow.
One of our younger officers that was just stationed there, did a little research and found out prior to it even being a military installation, there was some folks that owned that property back in the day, and they have a history of market hunting and trapping bears. So it's probably a trap that was left behind and over time got buried. And so that right now that trap is at our region headquarters, and eventually we're building a museum down in the southeast, and that trap will be on display at our museum.
Oh, that's
it's part
cool.
of our history.
That's just cool to picture. I mean, when everybody gets to see you holding that trap,
everybody wants to hold it, get a picture with it, because it's so. It's a look. It's a look back in history, and you could be cathartic about it, saying, "Holy cow! The reason I'm standing here today is because of the fact that these type of devices were used back then, wiping out our wildlife, and kind of linked the beginning to what we are now." So it was pretty neat.
It's definitely really cool. Have you always wanted to be a game warden?
No.
Okay.
No, but I always had a love of hunting. I've always, through my, I've been hunting since I'm a kid. I come from a hunting family, but I could remember back in the day hunting in really rural areas of Northeast PA and seeing that game warden cruise through with that vehicle and get out with that Stetson on. And it was always impressive. I never envisioned myself being a game warden, but I always thought, boy, that's, command, presence, and, it was just really neat. And the fear that the game warden struck and everybody, here comes the game warden. But I actually went on a different career path and, became a paramedic at 19 years of age, and did that in a busy part in the city of Scranton, and loved it. And then I had the opportunity to become a deputy in 1991. At that time, you pretty much had to beg the district conservation officer to hire you. And I can remember, who eventually became my supervising conservation officer, and today I call my mentor, Tim Conway, who was a new officer in the district, and I'd see the state car parked when I was a paramedic, and I'd pull in and said, hey, I'm really interested in being a game warden. And he's like, I'm not hiring anybody. Look me up in like 6 months, and then 6 months would go by. I'm like, hey, I'm still interested. And you're like, well, send me a resume. And then lo and behold, one day I got a letter in the mail and say, hey, if you're still interested, we're giving an exam.
Nice.
Showed up, had a little impromptu interview, met a bunch of other guys. There was like 10 of us there. I was in Lackawanna County, and there was 2 districts, and the 2 officers there, Chet Cinnamillo, who was in the south, and Tim Conway in the north, eventually end up hiring 10 of us. And
10 deputies?
10 deputies, and I think there was like 5 or 6 of us either became salaried game wardens or fish wardens out of that pool. Dan Figure, my regional director, it was one of those guys that was hired by the neighboring district officer, and his career started just like mine. But I think Dan's passion was a little different than mine. I think he envisioned being a game warden since he was in kindergarten. So, and he moved up like I did. He did a little quicker than I did. He got in a class, 2 classes sooner than I did. The deputy program was definitely the springboard to my career where I am today.
Right.
And then I realized like 3 years into it, like, wow, working for free as a deputy is so much cooler than getting paid to be a paramedic. Yeah. And that was it. I just made my mind up that, this is probably the career path that I want to do.
Nice. Yeah, that seems, and you get a taste of it. They get to drive you as an employee, but you get to get a feel for what being a game warden in Pennsylvania is all about by being a deputy.
Well, yeah, and it's most definitely, the on-the-job training, and you see what the responsibilities are, and handling the public, and knowing the agency and the history, why we're here, what we're doing. And I think when you, at the deputy level, those folks are there because of the resource.
Because they want to be.
They want to be there. And a lot of our deputies are very accomplished members of society. I mean, lawyers, professionals that I want to give something back to the resource.
Yeah.
What they do for us and how they support our officers in the field is extraordinary. And they've become, very close friends and like almost family members of their supervising officers. Like mine, Tim Conway, when I started, I remember his kids being in diapers when I'd be going over to the house to meet him, go on night patrol, and next thing you know, I'm going to their weddings.
Yeah.
And seeing their kids born. So it is most definitely a family affair.
Yeah.
Which is important. I think is unique and important.
Right. I know my family ate, breathed, slept, fishing game stuff, and still do, still love.
You'll never lose it.
My son and my wife got involved with the law enforcement memorial, and my son hands out flowers every year down there to survivors, and he just has it's a great impact on him, and it's a great impact on everybody, and it's just like you said, it's getting the family involved in that, and so they understand that it's special and it has a lot of meaning, and I think just being around us, they get that, and especially being brought up in it. Your kids ever want to be a game warden?
I don't think so, because I think for the fact is my kid loves the hunt, and my kid ended up following in my footsteps kind of the same way of becoming a paramedic. I think that he saw the sacrifices that I had made. There are some regrets. I know that you and I have talked about, just last night on a little stroll talking about, how's your son and how's your kid? And, we've known each other so long. And I said, I could remember my son saying to me, Dad, I hate your job sometimes. And it's because we work through the whole hunting and weekends, and they're in school, and the Saturday comes and they want to go squirrel hunting, and Dad's just walking in from Friday night at 3 a.m. for night patrol, and he's taking a shower. He's going to sleep a couple hours and get back out because he's got to chase pheasant hunters and things of that sort. So I think what the public doesn't see is that the sacrifice our guys make, not only for the work they do, but what the toll it takes on their family. And when your son says that to you, it hurts. It hurts. But I think he realizes now, being an adult and married, that he's proud of his dad, and he talks about it, and so there's a give and take. But I think he would rather do what he's doing and be able to go out on that Saturday and hunt and be out all night chasing bad guys. So
right. And my boy wants to be a veterinarian at this point. He's 13, so we'll see where that goes.
Yeah.
Something to fall back on. Definitely a demanding job, and I don't know how many times I say it's a lifestyle.
And absolutely, I think that, and we talked about this also, about the whole part of it being a lifestyle, and the creed and the mottos and our lingo, how we talk, and it's 4 o'clock. We never wanted to throw the keys to somebody else. If we weren't done, we wanted to be done 4 o'clock the next day till we got that guy and that investigation was over.
Absolutely.
So there's definitely a culture that I would never want to see leave this job, and that's my job right now with fostering new officers coming up. I need to pass that culture.
I agree. Yeah, we all need to pass that culture on. So, but talking about all that drive and everything, I'm thinking, Mark's going to have some really good cases. Pennsylvania is filled with wildlife and needs a lot of protecting, because you guys got probably more poachers nationwide because you have more hunters nationwide too.
We have quite a bit of hunters.
Yeah.
We used to tout that we were over the million mark stage with hunters. We had 1% of the population in Pennsylvania, and that's dwindled, with the change of society. But it's no different than here in Maine or New Hampshire or California or Texas. Just a change in society, and we're seeing that decline. But we still have a lot of hunting heritage, and the first day of deer season is like Christmas in Pennsylvania. Kids still.
Does the school still close for that?
They did. Every Monday it was closed. You'd go on vacation, on Wednesday evening, and the kids wouldn't go back to school till Tuesday because of Thanksgiving. But this year, we're actually trying a test of opening on that Saturday after Thanksgiving.
Oh.
Yes. So
that the schools won't have to close.
They won't have to, and it's going to give an opportunity for those older kids that are in college, and instead of going home and or back to school and not able to hunt, at least they'll be able to hunt with their family on Saturday for the first day. So we're looking to try to do whatever we can to increase participation here, and our agency believes right now that with this Saturday opener, we may bring more people back for those folks that couldn't get out on Monday.
Yeah, well, that's a good try. So your best case? Can you pick one out? I mean, there's many cases.
There's many
sure.
cases, and
the one
a
that
lot
stands
of great
out.
stories.
I know I can pick my best case right out of my head.
Yeah,
and I already shared that one with the listeners.
Talk about cases, and you don't know when that big case is going to come. It could happen at any moment. It
could happen when you're off.
It could happen when you're off.
I've done cases on my days off.
Yep. It could happen over a holiday. One thing that you learn as a game warden, that people will go out to violate the law at any time of day, night, holiday. So these cases can happen at any time, and what's odd about mine is my most memorable case happened like a year out of the academy in 2001. By far is my most memorable case, probably the most in-depth investigation using other wardens, other agencies. It came out to a great result. I would like to say that individual was rehabilitated, but we've arrested him
since then
countless times since then with major violations, and my coworkers, the other wardens would laugh. It's like, oh yeah, you got this guy revocated for 51 years. All you did was cheat the state out of the commission out of $19 a year for his hunting license because he's still hunting. But basically what it was, you get into a district, and the big thing we talk about is knowing your public. And I think, you can sit back and wait for that radio to crackle and say, hey, you have a poaching case here, or this is going on. And we all know that 90% of what we do is either by information received or knocking on doors or gaining really good contacts and having people feed you that information. I went to a Sportsmen's Club meeting, and there was a fairly large Sportsmen's Club, not really used to that many people there. When I was in Lackawanna County, it was more of a urban area, and our Sportsman Club meetings would consist of like 6 or 7 people.
Oh, wow.
And when I went to Monroe County, in the heart of the Poconos, some of these sports clubs had 100 members, and they showed up for their monthly meeting, and they had a meal. And
you'd have 100 guys there.
And they'd have 100 people.
Wow.
In this. And I walk in, and I'm like thinking I'm going to walk in and and it was during our antler restriction. So, we're going out there trying to educate the public about antler restriction, and I walk into this room of like nearly 100 people, and then my jaw drops like, wow, what are all these people doing here? And, I hope I was prepared to do it. So I gave my lecture on antler restriction, why we were doing it, the benefits. And lo and behold, in the back, I'm like, hey, are there any questions? And I see this older gentleman raise his hand, and he's like, hey, what are we going to do about so-and-so and him shooting all our deer? And I'm like, and I'm thinking, the questions was antler restriction, but I'd be happy. And then everybody starts yelling, yeah, what are we going to do about this guy? He's killing all our deer and nobody's stopping him.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, that piques my curiosity. I just went over half hour of a lecture on antler restriction. The only question they have for me is, what am I going to do about this local poacher? And nobody's doing anything about it. So sat down with the individual, and he gave me some information, and turns out it was a notorious family from the area. My predecessors had them. It was just a continual thing from grandfather to father to sons to cousins. It was almost like a criminal operation where they were killing all these deer indiscriminately. Didn't matter if it had antlers, if it didn't. So myself and Vic Rosa, another game warden that was stationed down there with me, we get together and we start investigating this crew. So I need to know my target. Who am I dealing with? So I had a deputy with me, and I said, do you know this guy? And he's like, oh, yeah. Do you know where he lives? Yeah. So we went over to his house, and I pulled in his driveway. And he was in the driveway, and I said, hey, are you so-and-so? And he's like, yeah, why? I said, nope, just want to see your face. And I backed out of the driveway. And he was looking at me, and my deputy's like, can't believe you just did that. I said, I got to know my prey. I said, we got to know who we're chasing.
Yeah.
So basically what was happening was this family was killing up to several hundred deer through the fall season. And
Several hundred.
And after gaining this investigation, we got more informants. And one of them turned out to be his brother that was helping him in the processing of this deer meat into ring bologna, and they were selling it. And he said, we probably processed upwards over the last 2 years, upwards of maybe 1,000 deer. And that seemed kind of far-fetched.
Yeah. What is ring bologna?
Ring bologna is
I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's basically like if you know what bologna is, but it was made with venison.
Okay.
And they would mix it with pork.
Okay.
And it would be like a $50 size ring of small like a sausage.
Yeah.
And they would smoke it, and generally would be consumed during the holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, into Super Bowl Sunday.
Gotcha.
And so there was a short window where they would have to harvest their product, get their product to somewhere where they can process the meat, and then get it to market. And what ultimately ended up happening was this individual was on disability from a local factory where he had hurt his back, and he was claiming to be 100% disabled. Well, throughout the whole fall season, we were chasing him in pursuits after shooting deer, and I'm thinking, boy, for a guy being disabled, man, he can drive a car pretty darn good.
Yeah.
So one night, we had set up on a night surveillance, and lo and behold, this crew pulls up and shoots a deer in front of me. I end up getting up behind him, and I'm chasing the truck, and I'm running the plate on the truck. The plate's coming back stolen from a local car dealership. So I don't know who it is, but I have an idea who it is.
Yep.
So we lost him in the chase. Speeds went up like over 100 miles an hour. I had a deputy next to me, like totally freaked out, and I said, I'm not going to end up hurting one of us over a deer. So we backed off, and I said, let's go over and sit on the house. So I sat there till about 4 a.m. waiting for somebody to come back. And there was like a lot of activity there. And we ended up following a vehicle that left, and sure enough, we run another plate another plate that doesn't match. But it turned out to be another local guy who we've been following for the year. That was another poacher, and he didn't have a driver's license. And the state police said, if you ever get this guy, call us, because he's like a habitual offender and he's going to jail.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up calling the state police that night, getting this guy stopped and bringing him into the barracks. Trooper said, you're most likely going to jail. The funny part was, when we called him in his home to come back to the barracks, he drove to the barracks.
Oh, man.
With a truck loaded with blood in the back.
Oh, boy.
So deer hair, and so we knew he was involved at some point. It wasn't the truck we chased that night, but he was involved.
Mm-hmm.
We have our little ways of tricking folks on telling us. So we use a little technique of videotape that we alluded that we had, that somebody videotaped him shooting that deer. Basically came up with a deal, like if he had cooperated, we would try to get his driver's license back. So we ended up making him a confidential informant. And he gave us the whole program on, when they killed a deer, how they were doing it. And the funny part was where they were doing it. They would go and shoot deer in between houses in residential areas.
Wow.
And then have two people in the back of the truck run out, grab the deer, throw it in, and be gone. And by the time the homeowner woke up, they're gone.
Wow.
So this was a reoccurring thing. So we were looking for them in big open spaces in farm fields to poach.
Right.
And here they're doing it in neighborhoods between houses.
Yeah.
So we ended up finding out that a local butcher shop was processing the deer for them, grinding it up. And so we called the Department of Agriculture, and they do inspections in Pennsylvania on meat lockers and processing places. So we brought this really aggressive agent in, and she went in there, and there was a bunch of violations, and said, listen, cooperate with the Game Commission here. We might be able to work through these other violations you have. So through the whole course of the case, we were getting those people that were assisting, giving us written statements we wanted to get the ringleader, the guy that was pulling the trigger on all these deer.
Yeah.
So we found out that what he was doing is his former place of employment. He was selling all of this ring bologna to the employees of this factory. So it was up to between $500 and $750 a week.
Wow.
That they were collecting in cash from the amount of product they were selling.
Wow.
The next step was find out who's collecting the money and who's delivering the product and who's buying the product.
Mm-hmm.
So we went to this factory and talked to their administration, says we need to talk to your employees. And we sat them down to give us the boardroom. We brought in like 56 people.
Wow.
And
do interviews.
And we Mirandized them. They gave us a written statement.
This is a big case.
It was a big case. The funny part was the same group of people that they were our target. They were also a target for the state police for a very extensive burglary ring and car chop shop.
Hence the stolen cars from the dealership.
Exactly. So I get a call from a special investigator, one of the crime troopers from one of the barracks, and he says, "Hey, we're moving on this subject." And I said, "Okay." He says, "Well, we're moving on him now," and it was February, and I'm like, "Man, if we do a search warrant, we're not going to find any product in February. Can we wait till the next fall where we get them with all this product, because we're building this huge case?" And they're like, "No, we're going to hit 6 different houses, 2 garages, and we're bringing like 30 troopers in, and we're doing a sweep here." So I was pretty bummed out because I knew I wasn't going to find any corpus delicti at that point because it was all consumed. It was after Super Bowl Sunday. Well, through our investigation with these 56 people, it turned out that we had one individual that purchased, and he had 2 rings of bologna left in his freezer. So I was going to try to prosecute all these sales of meat through 2 rings of kibasi. Now, I knew it was probably going to be a long shot.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the search warrant was executed. We hit the mother lode from burglaries that went all the way into New Jersey. Speedways, they were stealing NASCAR collectibles. We found inspection stickers from garages from 200 miles away, that there was burglaries that were never solved. Drugs, stolen prescription plans. The guy's girlfriend had worked at a pharmacy, and she was stealing prescription, and they were getting opioids and selling those. So
I can see why they didn't want to wait.
Yeah, and ended up found 6 stolen vehicles. They were hitting laundromats. They had stolen washers, dryers, computers, all stored in their barn. Stolen firearms. So on their end, they did really well. So we had done the target's house and his parents' home. Well, even though we didn't have what we were looking for as far as the food product, the ring bologna and that venison, we did come up with like 10 unlawful deer racks, some in velvet, an unlawful bear. So it wasn't all for nothing. We actually got some good stuff out of it. So when the case all was coming to fruition, when we were going to court, he had a lawyer. And the lawyer said, "You got nothing here. You got him on 2 counts of selling meat. Yeah, we'll indicate that, yeah, he killed those deer. And we'll plead guilty to that, but we're not pleading guilty to 55 counts of sale of wildlife," because that's what we had gotten through our interviews. And we knew that he sold it. We knew the money that was collected. We had the guy that collected the money. We worked the deal with him. We did a little more digging, and we found out, well, wait a minute, like, this guy's on disability. He's
making ring bologna.
He's making ring bologna. We're
hauling
chasing
deer
him,
around.
and he had a car like registered in the local demolition derby at the county fair.
Really?
So we contacted the insurance company and said, "Hey, are you aware of all this?" Well, it turned out that he was collecting a check for like $1,900 a month, but half the check was going to his attorney. And
really,
yeah, because of retainer costs, because they were always in trouble, so they were always in court. So he had an attorney on retainer, and the way he paid him was through his disability check. So we're talking to insurance companies like, you need to look into this a little bit, because this guy he's disabled. We send an ambulance once a month to his house to take him to his doctor's appointments.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Wow.
When we end up going to court, we kind of laid it all on the table, and his lawyer once realized that, well, wait a minute, I'm getting half of a check from somebody that's claiming, which stunk of insurance fraud. Conspiracy, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
And they eventually settled. We didn't get to all 55. We had fines up to $26,000 and 51 years of revocation.
Awesome.
It gained a lot of credibility with the public, because we actually went after this guy, and we weren't afraid of him. And that was his MO. He did it by intimidation. He would burn people's property or vandalize it. He knocked all the windows out of the state police cars at a local barracks one time as retaliation for being arrested. So you were dealing with not your everyday poacher. This career criminal. Tough and ruthless. And so
didn't care.
Since then, it's been how many years? Our guys have gotten him. He's a felon not to possess, and we've gotten him with firearms and poaching incidents. So, he knows the heat's still on him.
Yeah. But you started that ball rolling way back.
Yeah, and there's a lot more elements to the case than talking for the few minutes we're here. I think it was a lot of accomplishment, a lot of self-gratification working with these other agencies, particularly my partner Vic Rosa, who put a lot of footwork in and interviewing, and it was just one of those basic cases where we took 2 rings of bologna and turned it into this major case and wrapped it up really nicely.
And a lot of times that's what cases start at, the little things. It's just identifying the little things and then investigating it. And I think that's the most important skill of a game warden, is having that ability to talk to people, knock on doors and say, "Hey, you know why we're here?" I love that part.
It's the best part of the job.
It is the best part. And solving the unknown.
Yeah, for the victimless, for people or wildlife that can't speak.
Exactly.
I always said our job was much more difficult than a homicide investigator, because deer and bear don't carry cell phones. They didn't talk to somebody the night before. Who were they at the bar with?
Yeah, that's right. So
we had to gain all of our
piece that all together
ourselves,
and find that human element that's involved with it.
Exactly.
Well, that's an awesome case. You had to be that would probably be one of my high points if I was in your shoes too, because that's incredible.
Yeah, so. Kind of knew that was probably going to be that one case for the career, and so far after 20, even with the deputy time, 28 years, I really, there's been other awesome cases, but that one was the most gratifying.
Jumps right out at you.
Yeah, it went from a complaint of somebody complaining about something and doing the footwork, and ended up with a great resolution of a case.
And you listening.
and listening to the public.
Yeah, because sometimes that's hard to do when people just generally complain. I mean, you even thought that, well, that's a whole bunch of fact or that's a whole bunch of fiction.
Yeah, how many people complain about incidents that happen, but and there's something that they don't know that you do and something like that. But again, it's investigation no matter what it is. Absolutely.
So you did bring something up through that, which the 3-point restriction that Pennsylvania did on their deer was somewhat controversial in the beginning. I believe to this day it's successful.
It is very successful, and it's actually really gained the support of our hunters.
Which is huge.
It was.
To go from very negative to very positive.
Exactly. And it's not all about, a lot of folks are saying, well, Pennsylvania is a traditional deer hunting state. White-tailed deer is the animal, and it's not about the trophy. It's not. I don't care how many points or how big the antlers are. It's about going out there hunting, bringing that table fare back at the end of the day. So trying to sell that antler restriction in its inception was pretty difficult. And our deer management team, headed by Gary Alt at the time, who was one of our renowned bear biologists, took over our deer section, and he had a tough time. I mean, we would have public meetings, and we would put him in a ballistic vest, and we had plainclothes wardens sitting in the audience in case something bad went well.
Wow!
Because he had death threats and everything, because we were changing the way traditionally people were going to hunt, and now they had to take a moment and count.
Yeah,
it wasn't that spike buck.
It wasn't brown; it's down.
Exactly. It came with a lot of opposition, but after a few years, when they saw the result, and it wasn't only of allowing the public to kill a nicer animal, it had a lot to do with wildlife health, because we were getting a much healthier specimen, a better deer, larger body weight. And it was, I always describe it as like when you have a high school football player, you have a kid that's 15 years old, and you see his physique and his ability at 15, but when he's a senior and he's 18, he's gained 50 pounds. And it's the same analogy there. You let these animals live past the 18 months. And, you look at these other states that are harvesting deer at 6 and 7 years old, and they're, 190-inch deer. We, too, in Pennsylvania could have that. And genetics, food source, and age class is what we were going for. And it's been...
And that's to bring a quality... to bring the quality up in your deer herd.
Yeah. And I think originally during our whole deer season, we kill a lot of deer in Pennsylvania. I think it's like close to 400,000, something like 150,000 antler deer. And at that time, we were killing 15% of our deer were 2.5 years old or older. 15%. And after a few years with the antler restriction, that went up to like 65 or 70%.
Nice.
So the body weights were larger, deer well over 200 pounds, which was unheard of, and beautiful, beautiful bucks that these guys were harvesting. So we have a 3-point in our area, and when you go out west where the food source is better, larger agriculture, we have a 4-point. It's called 3-up rule. So they have to have 3 points on the top, so it would be 3 points in a brow tine.
Wow.
In our region, it has to be a brow tine at least 1 inch in length.
Wow, and it's been so effective. The hunters are happy now.
Yep.
They're killing a better deer. That you're seeing a healthier population of deer in Pennsylvania.
Exactly.
Numbers, have they dropped because of the quality?
The first year we saw a decrease in the buck harvest, and the reason for it is because they had to look a little harder. And that deer that may have been a legal buck, they weren't sure of, they let it walk by. So it was reduced. And it didn't come without its issues. We do still have mistake kills. We do have individuals that do honestly make some type of mistake in identifying that animal. And we have provisions for that. They're not punished. There's a restitution of $25. They don't keep the animal.
So it doesn't benefit them. It doesn't benefit
them, but they do get a second tag for a second chance.
Yeah.
So the first year we saw some districts had over 100 mistake kills, and wardens were out till like 2 a.m. doing mistake kills.
Oh boy!
It's not that bad now. We still get mistake kills, but it's
people are getting used to it.
They're taking their time and looking, and I think the public's reaction has been very good with the antler restriction. They're seeing that they don't have to go to Ohio to kill a trophy class buck now. They can do it in their backyard.
Yeah.
So
yep, no, that's instrumental. And I know New Hampshire tried to do that a few years ago, and we have winter, which kills our deer. So I think it's a whole different strategy. You do have to look at everything, but it's great to see a success story like that. And, guys like Gary Ault sticking his neck out there for the resources.
He did, and I think the fact that he brought so much credibility with our bear program, that, he had a lot of trust there, but still the public was not in support of it in the beginning. I mean, It came with a lot of turmoil and opposition.
Yeah, and the bear program in Pennsylvania, you have, the largest population of bears and the biggest bears in that?
Right now, yeah, we're looking at maybe a population of about 22,000.
22,000 black bears.
If you look back in 1982, we had like 3,500.
Wow, they've been breeding like rabbits.
Yeah, we got the food source, we got the habitat, and we've seen some tremendous animals, tremendous bears being harvested.
What are you seeing for weights on some of the big ones?
Well, greater than 800 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, in 2003. We had, in my district, 3 bears that were harvested over 800 pounds. And I believe the largest right now is 878, was harvested in Pike County a few years ago. And there's probably somewhere 1,000-pounder roaming somewhere in the Commonwealth, particularly in Pike County in the Northeast where we have a lot of swamps. Mm-hmm. Bears right now from the month of April till October, that's what our wardens do in our region anyway. We may do like 1,500 bear complaints, but we have the population. Mm-hmm. And I remember a statement when I was in the academy. Gary Ault said, society will only tolerate so many bears. And I said, well, what would be that?
You could put cougars and grizzlies and everything else on that list too.
Yeah. And he said once we reach a threshold around 20,000, society is really going to push back. And he was right. I mean, we, in our region, we trap about 800 to 1,000 bears a year in Pennsylvania in the 6 regions. My region does about anywhere between 200 and 300, depending on food sources. If we have a good berry population or beech nut, our bear complaints seem to be a little lower. But if we have those lean years, they come in for the bird seed, the garbage.
Right to the roof.
And, some of our guys, that's all they do is, trap bears all day long and handle bear complaints. So right now, that is the biggest hurdle for us in the summer months, is handling bear complaints.
Wow, and that's a lot. Any good bear cases that you can come to the top of your mind?
Yeah, in Pennsylvania, you can't bait.
Yeah, and you guys hunt them in a whole different way.
Yeah, a whole different way.
Yeah, bear drives.
And they're usually, and we're not, and that's the issue right now, is that we're seeing a decline in that type of hunting, where you would get a truck and they can't hunt greater than 25 individuals in a party for big game. So
holy moly, 25 guys.
You would see 2 pickup trucks like an army, full of orange, pull up, and they would hit a swamp, and they'd have standers and drivers, and they knew the swamps to drive, they knew where to go.
And driving, just for everybody knows, if you're not familiar with it, basically people walk through a piece of woods and the animals run out ahead, and the hunters harvest them on the other end where they're sitting and waiting for them to come out. So, and that was common for deer with me growing up. Pennsylvania, it's on steroids. I mean, we were only allowed 6 in a party total, not 25.
So, they could be very efficient. Especially those groups that are traditionally, that's what they do, and they're very successful, and we depend on them being successful to
reduce the population so you can sustain it.
And there's no other better way than we both know than hunting to keep these populations in check. So with bears, we allow them to drive, but we don't allow them to bait. That is one way that it's a fair chase issue in Pennsylvania, because we're very populated. You can artificially change the weight of a bear. If you can get a bear coming into a donut pile daily, you can take a bear that should be 250 pounds and make them 400 in a short period of time. Right. So that's why our record books don't reflect weight. We do it by skull size, because the weights can be artificially adjusted. You start feeding a bear fat, suet, grease. You can get them plumped up pretty quick.
Yeah, makes very good sense.
So the bait issue, we take very seriously in Pennsylvania. You can't even use a lure, any type of scent lure either.
No scent, huh? No bacon burns, no honey burns, nothing. Wow.
Nothing. So even though we have a good population and they could be a nuisance, we still protect that resources. You obviously can't kill them in a den. baiting.
I would imagine in and around agricultural is a pretty popular spot to hunt.
Yeah, and it helps out the agricultural community.
Yeah.
Because they do have the right to destroy those animals if they're destroying their crops. And we try to have those folks give us the opportunity to either trap them and get them out of there or allow hunting opportunities. The bears in our area carries a lot of tradition with bear hunting, and as being a game warden in a particularly traditional bear hunting area, we take pride in our enforcement of bears. So, some of the cases, you think of a lot of sometimes individuals that aren't licensed. And we have a very liberal bear season. We have a lot of extended seasons. This year you're going to be able to hunt it with an inline archery equipment. And when the deer season comes, you can harvest a bear if you have a bear tag.
Wow.
So what happens is these individuals will be out and they'll hunt. They won't have a bear tag. And a bear will come by and they'll kill the bear. And then they'll go back to the local sporting goods shop, buy a bear tag the bear.
Right.
The great part is we have check stations, and every hunter is required within 24 hours of harvesting a bear, you have to present it to a bear check station. And at those stations, we have officers and we have biologists. So our biologists are collecting that data, pulling a tooth, weighing that bear, looking at the general health, and we base our population on our ear tags. We know how many bears we handle. So the ratio of how many bears come in tagged to what's not tagged, we use our formula that tells us what our population is, because we know how many bears we have tagged. So if we have bears coming in that are untagged, they do a formula where they know, well, this section of population untagged, we've handled these, so they can pretty much dial in on how many bears we have. So that information is collected, and then we have the officers there, and what are they looking for? How long has this bear been dead? Is there apple mash in the bear's mouth or in the esophagus? Our cases start a lot during the season. One memorable case, as we started talking about, was we had an individual that was working at a taxidermy studio. He was bringing taxidermy mounts to another taxidermist.
That's kind of odd.
It was weird because the mounts were half finished. This kid would bring half finished mounts to this taxidermist, and he said, "Hey, can you finish this for me?" And the taxidermist said, "Yeah." I was like, "Yeah, I was doing it myself, and I don't know what I'm doing." And so he brought them like 2 or 3 mounts, and the taxidermist is like, "Something's wrong here. The work that's being done on these animals," and they were like foxes and coyotes. They were professionally done. Like he could tell that another taxidermist, and it wasn't this kid. He called some of his neighboring taxidermists and says, "Hey, are you missing mounts?" And the one taxidermist said, "Yeah, I'm missing like 4 coyotes." And he's like, "Well, I think I have them. So can you come over here?" So the other taxidermist would say, "Hey, yeah, that's my stuff." So he narrowed it down. He had these 2 kids helping him skin bears and deer during the hunting season. And in turn, this kid was stealing mounts, taking them to somebody else to have them mounted. They arrest the kid. The local police arrest him for theft. And the kid's like, "Oh, am I getting arrested?" He's like, "Yeah." It's like, "It's that." "Well, it's a mount." "Well, you don't understand. You're stealing somebody else's property. It doesn't matter. It's still a theft." He says, "Well, if I give you some information about an illegal bear, will you give me a break?" So they called Pete Sussenbach, my neighboring officer at the time. It was his district. And he says, "Yeah, I have information that a friend of mine killed a bear out of season." Okay. So the cop said, "Hey, listen, if he gives you good information, taxidermist is cool with it, we'll write him a summary ticket for retail theft and cut him loose if he gives you good information." So we start working.
And it is all about good information.
It's all about good information.
Because I've had that bad information that turned out sour, and I cut a deal prior to.
Yeah.
So I learned that one time you make that mistake and never again.
Yeah. It's sometimes it's a gamble, and sometimes that carrot gets dangled in front of you thinking, "Wow, I'm going to get this bigger case when I have this in front of me." And I guess it's the cost of doing business, Wayne.
It is, but it still burns.
It does. It does.
It only happened once, never again. I learned my lesson. Yeah.
The police and the taxidermist cut a deal and said, "Yeah, I'm fine with that." And he gives us the information. So basically what he tells us is him and his buddy are on the last day of bear season, or last day of deer season, the rifle deer season, and a bear comes by and his buddy shoots this bear. He helps him take it out with an ATV. And he says, "Yeah, the bear hide is at this other taxidermist." So I'm thinking, boy, something stinks here. He's already puts himself at the scene of the crime. He's actually a co-conspirator here. He helped him take it out. We'll deal with that later. But we wanted to get the guy that actually killed the bear.
Yeah.
He's incriminating himself in a crime, which he doesn't understand. But hey, we'll deal with that later.
I didn't understand it was theft about the taxidermy either. So,
yeah, exactly.
You know, we're going down the same road.
So we go down to this other kid's house and bang on the door, and he's, guy, no, I don't know why you're here. Well, what about this bear you killed on the last day? Well, this kid blurts out, well, he killed a bear too. It's like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, he killed a bear the Saturday before, and I helped him drag that bear out, and I shot another bear on Saturday.
Oh, boy.
So our informant, I don't know what he was thinking. So we ended up,
himself.
Yeah, we end up going back to the taxidermist and said, hey, I need to see these bears, and sure enough, he gives us 2 hides.
Uh-huh.
But when he gives us the hides, there's legal kill tags on them. And I'm thinking, how could there be legal kill tags on them? Seals, because the only way you get those seals is if you take them to a bear check station. Mm-hmm. And this was after our bear season. So I run the numbers on the tags. Well, it comes up to some other person that had wasn't even associated with them. So I call him up. I said, hey, did you kill a bear? Yeah. Well, I took it to this taxidermist. Well, here, not only were they stealing mounts, but they were cutting tags off legal bears
and putting on
illegal bears.
Oh my!
To pass them off. So it ended up that
he didn't get much of a break.
No, he didn't.
No,
he didn't. We ended up charging the one kid with an awful bear, and actually we charged him with 2 bears because they co-conspired. Helped him with both of them helped with 2 bears. So that was kind of a funny one.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're not real smart.
Yeah.
Which is a benefit to us.
No doubt. That kid kind of ratted on himself.
He ratted on himself in his buggy.
So that's just perfect. So. Yeah, and we're here at the Maine Field Day. So game wardens have field days every year usually, and here we are in Maine. And why Mark's here up from Pennsylvania, give me an opportunity to speak to him. Anything in closing you can think of?
No, I think you ended your career.
Yeah.
And after how many years, and I want to congratulate you for that because really didn't do it formally.
Yeah.
Kind of saw your enthusiasm through your career, and bringing our new guys up here was amazing because I wanted them to be around like-minded individuals with that enthusiasm. So when they go back, they're like, wow, being a game warden is like something pretty special.
It is. It's very special.
So being here and doing your podcast is kind of, I'm kind of getting to the end of my career here, and it's been
a way to pass on that stuff.
Yeah, and for you and I to be sitting here doing this, whoever thought 20 years ago you'd be doing a podcast?
Yeah, whoever thought a year and a half ago I'd be doing a podcast.
Yeah, and for us to be at the Maine Field Day where we first met, and had that friendship and all the great guys and gals that we've formed relationships up here. So I thought, man, this is, I think, a highlight of my career.
Yeah, it's great being a game warden.
It's awesome being a game warden.
Yeah, and I hope many of my listeners follow suit or just get the feel, get the cases, and appreciate what game wardens do.
Hey, there's less than 7,000 of us in the country. Where I come from, we got 4,500 state troopers in our state. And
that's almost the country's
and
numbers.
And there's only 200 of us, so... in Pennsylvania.
Still a lot of podcasts to do, Mark, when I hit every one.
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome.
Hey, thanks again for sitting down and having a chat with me.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure and actually an honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Please join me, Game Warden Wayne Saunders, and other game wardens on our adventures, protecting wildlife, saving lives, and having fun, all while serving the public and the natural resources of our planet. Listen to the tales and experiences of those who work in the outdoors while being entertained with stories about encounters with poachers, wildlife investigation, murder investigation, near-death experiences, search and rescue missions, wildlife interactions from game wardens around the country and around the world. When I retired, I realized I couldn't let go of that legacy, but rather wanted to share the passion, the commitment, and the stories of those men and women that call themselves game wardens. This is Game Warden Wayne Saunders, and this is Warden's Watch.